When our finances finally allowed us to move up, Janice and I'm Neville, gravitated toward Blueberry Way, a quaint cul-de-sac with only 10 houses. The numbering followed the traditional English pattern: odd numbers on the left, even numbers on the right. Our new home, number 9, was the last on the left. It had a charming but slightly sloping back garden that ended at a modest fence overlooking a small river. Not the most ideal setting for families with young children, but that suited us just fine. We had none. Across the road, number 10 was also on the market, slightly cheaper than ours, with a smaller back garden. But our decision had already been made. I've always had a thing for the number 9. Our new home needed some work, but the most expensive job, rewiring the entire house, had already been completed. That was a relief. I had just landed 2 new contracts, and the commissions were already in the bank. With my job allowing me to work mostly from home, aside from the occasional midweek trip, I had ample time to dedicate to renovations. Winter arrived as we slowly pieced the place together. We opted for underfloor heating, and while I could handle most of the DIY, plumbing remained beyond my expertise. Janice, however, was a natural with a paintbrush. She even created a stunning mural on one of the living room walls. So mesmerizing that we often joked it was more entertaining than the TV. One crisp December morning, the frost was particularly thick. Janice was running late for work, so I grabbed her Renault keys and a kettle of warm, not hot, water. Carefully, I poured it over the windscreen, then the rest of the windows before turning on the engine and cranking up the heater. A squeegee wiped away the last stubborn frost. As I finished, something caught my eye. It was exactly 9 miles to Janice's office, and the odometer read 9,810 miles. It wasn't significant, but I found it amusing. Given the way Janice used the car for errands and weekend trips, it was rare to see a reading so perfectly divisible by 9. By the time she got home that evening, it should be at 9,036, and I already knew I'd check. That's the kind of pedant I am. Thanks for warming my car, sweetie. What's the house project for today? Janice asked, grabbing her bag. The last one I've been putting off. The cupboard under the stairs. Not sure what to do with it, though. Maybe I'll just paint the inside white. Well, good luck. See if you can pick up a Christmas tree if you have time. We'll decorate it this weekend. With that, she rushed out the door. I poured myself another mug of coffee and turned to face my task for the day. The cupboard under the stairs was nothing remarkable. Just a small, sloping space, its ceiling angling downward at 45 degrees until it reached the 3rd step. That last section was boxed off, too small to be useful. We had already finished unpacking, and I couldn't think of anything we'd store here. A fake Christmas tree, maybe? But Janice was set on a real one, and we planned to try planting it in the garden after the holidays. Something about the interior of the cupboard felt odd. A single iron hook was mounted just inside the door. It resembled the fire poker from our newly restored fireplace, except for its oddly bent end. I wasn't sure what it was for, but it seemed too purposeful to discard. Then there was the floor. Smooth pine boards, which was strange because the rest of the hallway was covered in granite tiles. A worn welcome mat lay inside, its presence puzzling. Who puts a mat inside a walk-in cupboard? Finally, my eyes landed on something even stranger. A small, round metal stud embedded in the top of the sloping panel. About the size of a 50-pence piece, it seemed deliberately placed. But for what purpose? Time for action. I reached for the hook and accidentally knocked over my coffee. Cursing under my breath, I jumped back, releasing my grip on the hook. I dashed to the kitchen for a cloth, but when I returned, the coffee was mostly gone, soaked up, I assumed, though the mat didn't seem particularly wet. My mug lay on its side, but the hook was missing. I frowned, scanning the small space. I hadn't heard it hit the floor. Bending down, I lifted the old mat, and that's when everything made sense. A small, round hole was carved into the floor beside another metal stud. My hook had disappeared into it. But where did it go?
Directly above my head, hanging from the top stud, was a metallic plate. It must have been magnetic. The floorboard beneath me weren't nailed down, but instead rested on some sort of hidden frame. I recalled the hook I had found earlier. It was designed to fit into a small hole in the floor. Tentatively, I inserted the hook and lifted. To my astonishment, the entire section of the floor rose effortlessly, revealing a concealed compartment. The magnetic studs clicked into place, holding the floor up securely. Beneath it, a dimly lit concrete stairway descended into the unknown. The uppermost steps were stained with a dark liquid. Curious, I wiped it with a cloth and immediately recognized the scent: coffee. I took the cloth back to the kitchen and grabbed a torch before returning to investigate. At the bottom of the steps, an old warped wooden door stood, locked. My eyes scanned the surrounding area and landed on a rusty key hanging from a nail on the adjacent wall. Heart pounding with anticipation, I took the key, inserted it into the lock, and turned. The door creaked open, revealing a basement. The space was empty. There were no signs of rodents or any indication that it had been used recently. It extended directly beneath our kitchen diner, covering about a third of the house's area. My wife, Janice, was thrilled at our discovery, especially since it would likely increase the property value of number 9. We speculated that the previous owner had merely stuffed junk into the understairs cupboard, never realizing there was a false floor hiding an entire room. It certainly hadn't been mentioned during our house viewing. While we debated potential uses for the newfound space, I arranged for a contractor to inspect it. I wanted to know if we could extend our underfloor heating and install proper lighting. That evening, before heading to the pub, I habitually checked Janice's car's odometer, 9,036 miles. The next morning, an expert came to assess the basement. He confirmed that it was structurally sound, dry, free from rot or damp, but extremely cold, with no mobile phone reception. A search through the 1960s blueprints revealed that every house in Blueberry Way was originally designed to include a basement, but most had been deemed too costly. Ours, being the first house built on the corner lot, was the only one with one. Concerned about the heating, I asked the contractor if our existing boiler could handle the additional space. No problem, he assured me. Your heating system is zoned. I'll install a separate thermostat and timer for the basement. Just be disciplined about only heating the rooms you're using. If you stick to that and don't run the heat at full blast 24/7, your boiler will handle it just fine. Satisfied, I told him to prepare a quote and promised to get back to him in a couple of days. He guaranteed he could complete all the work before the holidays. The following Tuesday, I had to leave for a business trip. Where to this time? Janice asked over breakfast. Liverpool, I replied. There's a morning train, and I'll go straight to the hotel. The meeting's at their offices Wednesday morning, and I'll be back that night. Will you drive to the station? She asked. Yeah, I confirmed. Good. Then I can put my car in the garage. Sure thing. And while I'm away, think about what you'd like to do with our extra room. She shivered slightly. I'll think about it, but I'm not going down there. It's too damn cold. Tuesday morning was icy. I followed my usual routine, pouring warm water over her windshield before she left for work. I took a glance at her odometer, 9,124 miles. She gave me an extra affectionate kiss at the door. Call me when you get to the hotel, sweetie, so I know you've arrived safely, she said. Of course, I promised. She drove off, and I packed my small overnight bag into the passenger seat of my Audi before heading to the station. Wednesday night, when I returned home, I was met with a warm welcome. How did the meeting go? Janice asked eagerly. Better than expected. I replied. They signed up for another 2 years without demanding a discount. We can afford one of those vacations we talked about. You wanted the Seychelles, and I was thinking Prague followed by the Dalmatian coast. I'll pick up some brochures tomorrow. She squealed with delight. I hope we go somewhere warm. I smiled. We'll see. The next morning was another freezing one. As I took the kettle outside to defrost her car, something caught my eye. Number 10, across the road, had put up Christmas lights all over their house. That's when it happened. The moment when the worms of suspicion started to wriggle in my mind. I frowned and turned to Janice's car. The odometer should have reflected 4 work trips. 2 days' worth. That meant it should read around 9,160 miles. Possibly more if she'd gone anywhere else. Dinner, shopping, errands. But the number staring back at me was 9,142. 2 trips. 1 to work, 1 home. Did you have any trouble with your car while I was away? I asked casually as she sipped her coffee. No, why? She responded without hesitation. Just curious. I thought I heard a bit of a knocking sound when you pulled away just now. Maybe it's just a cold. She gave me a small smile. Probably. I nodded but said nothing more. Inside, my mind was racing. Where had she been? Or rather, where hadn't she been?
It had been a fine week until that one night. My wife, Janice, had insisted that everything was normal, but I had a gut feeling something wasn't right. She claimed I was just imagining things, but I wasn't convinced. That night, I sat at my computer in the study, reflecting on the oddities that had been nagging at me. Was my wife being unfaithful? Had she spent a night away from home? The question lingered in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I had to know. I soon discovered what I was looking for, a spy app for her phone. After a moment of hesitation, I borrowed her phone while she was in the other room. I quickly plugged it into my computer, installing the app. It didn't take long, and before I returned it to its charging spot, everything was set up. Now I could monitor her messages, calls, and even track her phone's location, all from my computer or my phone. After she had gone to bed, I started my search. First, I checked her phone's location history. On Tuesday, she'd gone to work, but she hadn't come home that night. According to the app, her phone had moved to another part of the city and stayed there all night. I traced the route and confirmed that her car had remained at work, only returning the next evening after barely 18 miles had been logged. It seemed clear. She must have gone to a colleague's house and stayed over. The question was why. Had she planned to stay the night? Why didn't she bring a change of clothes? I reasoned that she could have been visiting a female friend. But why would she lie about her car being at work? It didn't add up. If she were having an affair, why wouldn't she do it at our house? Could there be an innocent explanation? I wasn't sure, but my suspicions were growing. On Sunday, I checked her messages, hoping to find some trace of clarity. What I discovered confirmed my worst fears. She was having an affair with her boss. The messages were explicit, detailing their secret rendezvous and the night she had spent at his house. I'd met him a few times. He was overweight and balding, hardly the kind of competition I would have expected. But the messages were clear. She was having an affair with him, and it seemed to be more than just a fling. The messages revealed that her boss was expecting a promotion to director in the new year. Once promoted, he'd be entitled to a personal assistant and could either hire a new one or promote Janice. I thought it was likely that spending the night with him would increase her chances of being chosen for the role. Yet, as I read further, it became clear that she was reluctant to have intimacy in our house, particularly in her marital bed. She was concerned that if I came home early it would raise questions. If anyone found out, she'd simply explain her absence by saying she'd stayed with a friend. But if I caught her at her boss's house, there would be no easy excuse. Then, one evening, she received a phone call. Her boss called her and said, "I won't be in tomorrow, Janice. I think I've got the flu." She replied with mock concern, "Well, I hope you haven't passed it on to me." Her boss laughed, saying, "No, not that. But Neville was asking about my car this morning. For some reason, he wanted to know about it." Janice dismissed it, telling him it was probably nothing, but she had a moment of doubt. "It's probably just my imagination," she said. Her boss, trying to reassure her, replied, "Don't worry about it, but you know you do have a garage. If you're worried, maybe you should get an app or something, like Find My Phone, to keep track of him." That suggestion hit me hard. I had already thought of that. "I could probably get someone to help me with that," she replied, oblivious to the fact that I already had access to all the information I needed. For the next week, things seemed to settle. Janice was still on her best behavior, and I had no idea what she and her boss were up to at work. As far as I could tell, They only had their illicit moments when I was away. Meanwhile, I focused on our plans for the basement. The heating system was installed, and we bought a large TV and DVD player for the room. 2 comfortable sofas and a low table completed the setup, creating the perfect cozy ambience. There was one small problem, though. The door to the basement, an old wooden door, had been replaced with a steel one. I told Janice it was necessary for the stability of the house and that the door had to open outward for structural reasons. "It's better for the foundation," I explained, but she seemed skeptical. "Why a metal door?" she asked, clearly confused. "It's temporary," I said, lying through my teeth. "The contractor didn't finish in time, so he installed this one as a placeholder until the proper door arrives in January." She still seemed unsure, but accepted my explanation. "What if we forget the key?" she asked. "We'd be stuck down here." "Don't worry," I reassured her. "We each carry a spare key on our normal keychains, and there's a third key on a hook just inside the basement door for emergencies." She smiled and nodded. "Okay then. I like the lighting in here," she said, her tone shifting to appreciation. "It's very romantic." I agreed. The low lighting gave the room a warm, intimate feel, and the second Christmas tree illuminated the space with a soft glow. The curtains across the far wall made the room feel even cozier. I couldn't help but feel a sense of irony, the perfect setup for secrets, and I had a feeling it was exactly what was happening. Behind me, I had ordered 2 rugs that were supposed to be delivered in January, but I was pleased to find that they had arrived early and were already in place. They added a lovely warmth to the room, and I couldn't wait to start using them. I commented to Janice that everything was looking great, and she agreed, noting that the room felt lovely and cozy now. "I'm heading up to Edinburgh next Tuesday," I told her. "Could you pop in occasionally to check on the temperature here while I'm gone?" "No problem," she responded cheerfully. "I'll make sure everything's in order. I'll leave the heating on low every night to help the plaster and paint dry out properly," I explained. "Should keep everything fine." She smiled, nodding in agreement. "Sounds like a good plan." I continued. "This Scottish deal could be my biggest yet. If I get it, we could take 3 or 4 weeks off next summer. We could head to the Seychelles or somewhere in Eastern Europe if your boss will give you the time off." She raised an eyebrow, her smile widening. "I think I might be able to persuade him," she said, teasing. "I think I know how." Before I could reply, I added, "One last thing. Since it's nearly Christmas, I'm planning to visit my mom while I'm in Edinburgh. She lives just over the bridge in Dunfermline." "That sounds like a good idea," Janice agreed. "And when you get back, we can place the new rugs, add some scatter cushions, and then settle down to watch films and break in the new sofas." I grinned. Exactly. Both of them. I can't wait. Janice and my mother had always had a rocky relationship, but I never paid much attention to it. My mom always had something negative to say about Janice, something along the lines of her being too tardy or not measuring up in her eyes. I had always dismissed it as typical, "no one is good enough for my son" attitude. But looking back, I wondered if my mom had noticed something I hadn't. Regardless, I was looking forward to visiting her before Christmas, even though I hadn't actually had any real business in Scotland and had no intention of going to the Seychelles anytime soon. That evening, Janice went outside briefly to retrieve something from her car, and I took the opportunity to check my computer. When she returned, I noticed her eyes sparkle with excitement. "How about Tuesday night at my place?" she asked. "We can break in the new sofas in our basement." Her boss had already asked if the refurb was finished. "Yes, almost," she confirmed. "Just the rugs left to do." "Sounds like you've overcome your reluctance to make love in your own house," he teased her. She smiled coyly. "Yes, this time I have. It's not a problem now that I know where he is most of the time." Her boss seemed pleased. "So, what about in the marital bed?" he asked. Janice laughed. "I still draw the line there." I chimed in. "Tuesday it is then. Nev's going to Edinburgh, so he won't be back in time to catch us." "Perfect," her boss agreed eagerly. I'll give you an early Christmas present. You have to unwrap it with your teeth. Janice giggled. Can't wait. Just don't leave your car at the office, though. After work, I'll follow you to your place. We'll leave your car there, then I'll get in mine, and we'll drive straight into the garage. No one will see you come into the house. Sounds like a plan, she said, already planning the details in her head. Her boss, eager as ever, added, Stay the night, and I'll run you back to yours on Wednesday morning. I'll be free to stop by more than once before Christmas then. Janice purred. You'd better, because I plan to be thoroughly exhausted before Santa comes. He chuckled. After I give you your present, you won't be able to walk straight for a while. She laughed. It's starting to sound more like your Christmas present at this point. I'll be sure to get everything I want, he teased, and they both shared a sly smile. Shifting the conversation to work, Janice continued. So, let's agree on my pay scale now. I know there are 2 entry-level rates, but I think I'm worth the higher one. I've already checked, and it's at my discretion. Her boss agreed, but added, There's one last piece of experience you need first. Janice raised an eyebrow. What's that? He gave her a sly grin. I've always liked the idea of being taken care of afterward. Janice smirked. You naughty man. He pressed further. Will you do it? If you're good, she teased. He reassured her. Don't worry, I will be. The following Saturday, I went over to my friend Darren's place. He was a techie and often short on cash, so I had a proposition for him. We spent some time together, and he confirmed there was indeed a tracking app installed on my phone. Darren was known for his tech expertise, and I trusted him to help with some of the details. I had a deal with Darren. Nothing too crazy, but enough to get some quick cash in hand, a bit of work on the side, and we both got what we needed. I was a bit broke, so the arrangement suited me fine. I wasn't asking for much, just a bit of trust and no questions. Murder was off the table, of course, but everything else was up for negotiation. Edinburgh. Darren had asked, sounding uncertain. Yeah, exactly. Here's how it's going to work, I said, my voice steady. You drive here Tuesday morning, I'll pick you up, and we'll get you to the station. You'll catch the train to Edinburgh and take my phone with you. When you get to Waverley, you send a pre-written message for me. I'll cover the costs. You get 2 nights at the Karen Hotel. You can check out the nightlife, do some Christmas shopping, whatever. I'll catch up with you on Wednesday. If it goes wrong and I can't make it, you leave the phone at Waverley's lost property on your way back. No questions. If it works out, you give me the phone back, and I'll get you drunk on me. Edinburgh's hours away, Darren protested, but I was already in control. Right, but this is the deal. Tickets and hotels paid for already. You won't pay a thing. You'll have a bit of pocket cash, 200 now, and another 200 when I finish my job. Deal. I offered, keeping my tone casual. He agreed. We set it up. The plan was simple, and Darren didn't know how deep it all went. On Monday, I felt like I was holding my breath, waiting for everything to fall into place. Tuesday morning came, and I didn't waste time. I warmed Janice's car while she brushed her teeth. I wasn't a fan of checking the odometer, but I did it anyway. A stupid compulsion, but one I couldn't shake. While she was distracted, I took her handbag and swapped the basement key for a fresh one, a new front door key for the spare behind the door. They all looked the same, didn't they? She left for work, and I drove Darren to the station, then checked into a nearby hotel. It was getting dark, quickly. The sun set early in December. By 4:30 p.m., I was back at my place, moving swiftly, staying focused. No one would suspect anything. It all appeared normal. The heating clicked on in the house, the familiar hum of the living room as I left a message on my dictaphone. A simple task. Battery operated, the recorder had enough charge to replay my message repeatedly if needed. I slipped the dictaphone into my pocket and made my way to the basement. Janice had already picked out a film for tonight, one of those holiday specials to get them in the mood. Everything was set. The wrong keys were in place, The house was warm, and I knew where my phone was. Edinburgh. I waited. I stayed in my home office, pretending to focus on work. Her phone was my target. I could see the message arrive. Hi, babe. Arrived safely in Edinburgh. Will call at 10 p.m. from the hotel. Love you. See you soon. I watched her phone with intent. My mind was already racing through the next steps. The plan could still fall apart. I watched her movements carefully, tracking her phone as she left work, heading to her boss's house. That was the moment, the pivotal moment when everything could go wrong. What if they stayed there? What if they changed plans? I kept checking the location, my stomach tightening. She wasn't supposed to stay there. I needed them to follow through, to return to the house. Minutes felt like hours, but soon the tension eased. I saw the little dot on the map move again. They were leaving. They weren't staying. They headed into town. That's when I saw it. They were getting pizza. Of course they were. The plan was falling into place perfectly. I heard the faint sound of the basement door as they arrived, keys jingling in the background. Take these straight to the basement, under the stairs, Janice instructed, voice sharp but controlled. Her boss's voice followed. This door's the wrong way round. Don't worry, she reassured him. There are plenty of keys. I stayed still, listening as glasses clinked and a bottle of wine opened. My fingers brushed the new basement keys in my pocket, then the dictaphone, rewinding it once more, checking to make sure everything was ready. I could hear the faint sounds of their voices in the background as they settled in. 10 minutes passed. I gave them that time to get comfortable, their hands full with pizza and wine, distracted by each other. I wasn't in a rush, not yet. Everything had to be done just right. The last thing I needed was for this plan to go sideways. I double-checked everything, my keys, the dictaphone, the phone. It was all falling into place. The newly carpeted stairs were soft underfoot as I crept down, each step muffled, as though the house itself was conspiring with me. The air was thick with the scent of pine from the Christmas tree, mingling with the faint aroma of spilled wine and something else, something illicit. I paused at the bottom, my heart pounding, and peered around the doorway into the living room. The scene was almost cinematic in its depravity. Janice, my wife, was partially undressed, reclining on the sofa with a slice of pizza in one hand and a glass of my finest red wine in the other. Her boss, a man I'd met only once at a company dinner, sat beside her, dressed in nothing but silk boxers. He held his own glass of wine, the burgundy liquid catching the glow of the Christmas tree lights as he traced lazy patterns on her skin with his fingertips. The TV was paused on an intimate scene from some film, the actress on screen mirroring Janice's choice of attire, black stockings and suspenders. I had never seen Janice wear those before. She must have changed at work, I thought, a detail that made the betrayal sting even more. I stood there for a moment, unnoticed, taking it all in. The tree lights twinkled merrily, casting a warm, festive glow over the room. But the atmosphere was anything but joyful. It was surreal, like walking into a scene from someone else's life. My life, apparently. I brought your other Christmas present, I shouted, my voice cutting through the silence like a knife. I held up the little cassette player, its plastic casing gleaming in the dim light. Their reactions were priceless. Janice's boss jerked upright, spilling wine into his eyes, while Janice dropped her pizza slice onto her lap, the sauce staining her little black thong. She stared at me, open-mouthed, as I placed the cassette player on the floor, just inside the door. What? Janice began, but I didn't give her time to finish. I stepped back, closed the door, and twisted the double lock. The sound of the mechanism clicking into place was satisfying, final. I waited a couple of minutes, listening. Did I mention the basement was soundproof? The banging on the steel door was barely audible, even from where I stood. Eventually, I presumed they'd found some clothes, or at least tried to. Janice began her fruitless attempt to unlock the door, first with her key, then with the spare. If she'd been outside trying to get in, she'd have had more luck. I think I heard her pick up the dictaphone, her confusion palpable even through the thick door. The panic set in quickly. Shouting, banging, the sound of desperation. I had one last task before leaving. There was an isolation switch outside the door, and I flipped it, plunging the room into darkness. I waited a moment, imagining the scene inside. The lights, the TV, the DVD player, all shutting off instantly. They'd never get to see that film star's mouth invaded, or any other mouth, for that matter. Their phones wouldn't work, and the underfloor heating would only stay warm for a couple of hours. The only electrical item that would still function was the cassette player I'd left them. I climbed the stairs, the sound of their muffled shouts fading with each step. When I reached the top and closed the door behind me, the house was silent. I would have to retrieve the dictaphone and get rid of Janice's front door keys before calling the police. I already knew what I'd say to them. We had a terrible row officer. She wanted me to go away over Christmas. I told her many times to make sure she had the right keys. There are 2. I was going to get the door changed next week so it could be locked from the inside. The house was dark as I walked back to the hotel, the cold night air biting at my skin. I had an early start tomorrow and a lot to think about. But for now, I allowed myself a small, grim smile. Justice, I thought, had never tasted so sweet. Janice's voice trembled as she said, "But you told me he arrived in Edinburgh." She stared at her boss, her brow furrowed. He sighed, trying to calm her. "Maybe he flew back," he suggested, his tone suggesting a frustration at the unanswerable question. "I told you he was acting suspiciously," she snapped, her words biting. Her boss looked back at her, a flash of anger in his eyes. "That's right, blame it all on me," he retorted, his voice rising. He crossed his arms defensively. "But it's not helping, is it? How long do you think he'll leave us down here?" "Not long," he reassured her, though his voice had an edge of doubt. "He's just making a point." "I think this must be a game," Janice said softly, her voice a mix of confusion and fear. The recorded voice on the dictaphone suddenly crackled to life, bringing with it an eerie feeling. "Hi, babe, good job. Loverboy thinks you're so hot, you'll need to do something to keep warm. The weather's supposed to freeze tonight. By the way, I'm off to Scotland now. I'll be staying the weekend. My mom's half Scottish, so I might as well stay through to Hogmanay. See you when I get back in the new year. Though, you won't actually see me, of course. I'll give your love to Mum." The recording abruptly stopped, leaving a lingering silence in the room. The new year passed quietly. By January 2nd, number 10 on Blueberry Way had already taken down their Christmas lights, and the postman had stopped delivering mail to number 9. Letters piled up behind the door of the Hamiltons' house untouched. It was Mrs. Thornton from number 7 who first raised the alarm. She hadn't seen either of the Hamiltons since before Christmas, and Janice's car hadn't moved from the garage in weeks. The police arrived on January 8th. The house was eerily silent, empty but undisturbed. 2 mugs sat in the sink, and the bed was still made, as though the occupants had just stepped out. The Christmas tree in the lounge, now long extinguished, was the only sign of the festive season that had passed. It was as though time had stopped in the house. 3 days later, the forensic team arrived. When they lifted the welcome mat near the stairs, they found something unusual. Beneath the mat, a false floor was discovered. It led to a hidden basement. Inside, they found the bodies of the Hamiltons, and the coroner's report confirmed the worst. Both had died from hypothermia roughly 2 weeks prior. It seemed that they had tried desperately to escape, using all means at their disposal. The male victim had attempted to use the dictaphone as a tool to pry open the door, but it was smashed to pieces. The female victim's fingernails were broken and bloody from similar attempts to escape their cold, cruel prison. I read about the grisly discovery in the Edinburgh Gazette. By then, I had already moved to a flat in Leith and started working at a call center. Darren had moved on too. The last I heard, he was somewhere in Spain. Yesterday, I received notification that the Hamiltons' house had been sold. Number 9 fetched a surprisingly good price, considering its grisly history. I suppose the clever estate agent had left out the part about the basement when showing it to potential buyers. Number 9 has always been my lucky number, after all. Using my share of the proceeds, I bought a ticket to Prague. I'm going alone, didn't fancy the Seychelles as they suggested. And so here I am, preparing to leave for Prague, a city I've always dreamed of visiting. The past seems far behind now, buried beneath layers of time and memories. But the Hamiltons' tragic fate lingers in the back of my mind, reminding me how quickly life can spiral into darkness. As for me, I hope this new chapter in Prague will help me move on. Or maybe it'll just be another chapter in a longer story. Only time will tell.